Some things on the internet are not meant to be found. They lurk in the shadows, waiting.
Maya was 34 years old. She taught third grade. She packed her own lunch every morning, kept a small succulent on her classroom windowsill, and called her mother every Sunday without fail. She was, by every measurable standard, a woman whose life was working. That's what made it so hard to explain to people. There was no dramatic inciting incident, no affair confirmed, no explosive argument, no single moment she could point to and say, "There." That's where it broke. It was quieter than that. So much quieter. She kept a journal. I was sent photographs of several entries, and I want you to hear this in her words, not mine. She wrote, "He used to bring me coffee without being asked. Every morning, without fail, for 6 years. This morning I came downstairs, and he'd already left. The pot was empty. He knew I had a parent meeting. He knew. That was October. By December, the phone was always face down. By January, there were nights he didn't come home until she was already pretending to be asleep. One night, she didn't pretend. She was sitting up when he walked in at midnight, and she asked him, calmly, she wrote, very calmly, where he'd been. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, 'You look tired. You should sleep.' And he walked past her, down the hall, into the bathroom, locked the door. That was it. That was the whole conversation. No anger, no guilt, just that awful, deliberate nothing. The kind that's somehow worse than a fight, because at least a fight means someone still cares enough to burn something down." She wrote one more line that night. Just one. "I don't recognize him anymore. I'm not sure he recognizes me either." She didn't Google therapists after that. She Googled something else. The referral chain went like this. Maya told a coworker she was struggling. The coworker told her about a cousin who'd been in a similar situation. The cousin gave her a number. That number led to another number. 3 people removed from anyone Maya actually trusted. She found herself saving a contact in her phone under the name her source gave her. Just Mama Zola. No last name. No area code she recognized. They met in the back room of a hair braiding salon in a part of the city Maya had no reason to visit. She was told to come on a Tuesday, before noon, and to bring something her husband had touched that morning. She brought one of his coffee mugs, still unwashed. She would later write that she felt ridiculous carrying it on the bus in a plastic bag. She would not feel ridiculous for long. The back room smelled of burnt cloves, something floral she couldn't name, and underneath both, something older. Animal, almost. The walls were hung with cloth in deep red and brown. The floor had things on it she didn't look at directly. Bowls. Small bundles tied with cord. A photograph of someone she didn't recognize, pinned at eye level, facing the wall. Mama Zola was smaller than Maya expected. Older. She had the kind of stillness that doesn't feel like calm. It feels like patience. Like something that has been waiting a very long time and has stopped being bothered by the wait. She didn't greet Maya. She looked at the mug through the plastic bag, nodded once, and began. 3 things, she said. Something of his. Something of yours. Something that was both, once. She didn't explain what she meant by the third thing. She didn't need to. Maya understood immediately, and the understanding hit her somewhere beneath language. It works once, Mama Zola continued. What it fixes, fixed. What it touches, changed. You don't get to choose which parts. She slid a small piece of paper across the table. A list of items. A figure in the corner, circled. The receipt. She got a receipt. Handwritten. In red ink. I genuinely cannot decide if that's terrifying or oddly professional. What Mama Zola told her in that room before Maya left, I'll get to that. But first, you need to understand what Maya actually handed over. Because that's where the real price was hidden. Maya performed her part of the ritual on a Wednesday night. She followed the instructions exactly. She was precise about that in her journal, underlining the word exactly twice, as if she needed to make sure whoever read it later understood she hadn't improvised, hadn't deviated. Whatever came next was not because she did it wrong. He came home that Thursday with flowers. Not a grand gesture, just a small bunch of yellow ones from the petrol station down the road, the kind wrapped in plastic with a sticker price still on them. He held them out to her in the hallway and said he'd been thinking about her all day. She wrote that she cried, that it felt like having him back, that she stood in the kitchen holding those flowers and felt, for the first time in months, like the house was warm again. That was day 1. By day 3, she noticed he wasn't sleeping. Not insomnia. He would lie down, close his eyes, stay completely still. But when she woke in the night, his breathing was wrong. Too slow, too measured, like something performing the idea of sleep rather than actually doing it. By day 5, she caught him staring. Not at anything, at corners. The upper corners of rooms, specifically. He'd stand in a doorway and look up and to the left, and when she said his name he'd turn and smile, and the smile was right. Everything about the smile was technically right, but it took just a half second too long to arrive at by day 7. He started humming. She didn't recognize the melody. Asked him once what it was. He said he didn't know. Said it was just something stuck in his head, shrugged it off completely. But he hummed it constantly, under his breath while he washed dishes. Faintly, rhythmically, while he drove. On the 9th day, Maya woke up at 3 a.m. Her husband was standing in the kitchen. All the lights were off. He was still humming, and he was facing the wall. She went back to the salon on a Friday. It was closed. Not temporarily, gutted. Shelves empty. The back room stripped down to bare walls. A woman in the front unit said the salon had been closed for weeks. When Maya described Mama Zola, the woman's expression didn't change. She said she'd never seen anyone matching that description. Said it without blinking. Maya stood on that pavement for a long time. At home, things were getting worse. Her husband had stopped pretending to sleep. He sat in the kitchen chair most nights. Just sat. When she asked him questions, he answered, correctly, warmly, with the right words in the right order. But he never asked anything back. Not once. 6 years of marriage, and he had stopped being curious about her entirely. And then her own symptoms started. Lost time first. Small gaps. She'd be grading papers, and then suddenly it was 2 hours later and the papers were still blank. She'd be mid-sentence with a colleague and realize she had no memory of starting the conversation. Then the markings. 3 lines on her left forearm. Thin. Precise. Like something written in a language she didn't recognize. She hadn't put them there. She had no explanation. Her students started coming to her after class. Quietly, one by one, telling her she'd said things during lessons that she didn't remember saying. One child, 8 years old, told her that during silent reading time, Miss Maya had been standing at the front of the room whispering something under her breath for almost 10 minutes. The child demonstrated the rhythm of it. It was the same melody her husband hummed. I looked into that melody. It took a while, and I'm still not certain, but what I found suggests it isn't a song. It's a doll recitation, a specific one, used in certain practices as a binding call, not for the person performing it, but for whatever presence the ritual originally invited in. He wasn't humming randomly. He was maintaining something, keeping a door open. There's a voice message Maya sent to her sister during this period that I was sent a clip of. I am choosing not to play it. I've listened to it once. Some things you genuinely cannot unhear. What I will tell you is this. Mama Zola didn't work alone. The salon, the referral chain, the receipt, the specific items requested. That's infrastructure. That's a system. Whatever Maya walked into, It was bigger than one small woman in a back room. Much bigger. And Maya, by this point, was already too far inside it to find the edges. 11 months after that Wednesday night ritual, Maya disappears from every record I could find. No farewell post. No withdrawn bank account. No forwarding address filed with anyone. Her car stayed in the driveway for 6 weeks before it was towed. Her classroom was covered by a substitute who was told she'd taken emergency leave. Her mother called the police in December. Her husband did not file a missing persons report. When asked about it later, by Maya's mother, by a neighbor, by at least one person who knew them both, he said the same thing each time, in the same tone, with the same slight pause before speaking. Maya is fine. She just needed some time. That's all. Every time. Word for word. I don't know where Maya is. I don't know if the ritual was ever undone, or if something like that can be undone, or if undoing it would even bring back the version of her husband she was trying to recover. I don't have those answers. What I have is this, the last thing anyone. 3 weeks later, it didn't. Not because Desmond found his confidence, or changed his approach, or had some transformative realization about human connection. Because Desmond found a different solution entirely. The contact came through a man named Roland, a property lawyer Desmond had worked with for years. Roland was not a remarkable man in any obvious way, except for one thing Desmond had never been able to explain. Every room Roland entered, he owned within minutes. Every negotiation, every dinner, every conversation. Roland arrived and the space rearranged itself around him quietly and completely. Desmond had assumed it was confidence. Then he assumed it was charm. Then, after 14 years of watching it happen across every conceivable context, he stopped assuming and started asking. Roland didn't confirm anything directly. He never did. He simply wrote a name and a number on the back of a business card and slid it across the table and said, "Tell him what you want. Be specific." He doesn't respond well to vague. The practitioner, I'll call him Mr. Akin, which is not his name, operated nothing like Mama Zola. No salon, no back room, no atmospheric staging. He met Desmond in a glass-walled conference room on the 14th floor of an unremarkable office building. He wore a suit. He had a leather folder. He spoke like a consultant closing a proposal. "What you're asking for is presence," Mr. Akin said. "Dominance of atmosphere. The ability to occupy a space psychically, not just physically. It's a transfer, something that already exists in you, moved from where it currently sits to somewhere it can be used." Desmond asked what that meant. "It means we don't give you something new," Mr. Akin said. "We relocate something old. The part of you that absorbs, that defers, that makes you small in rooms. We move it somewhere it can't interfere." He opened the leather folder. 1 page. Clean. Clinical. A list of terms. I'll tell you what he gave up in a moment. But I need you to understand something first. Once I tell you, the rest of this story changes completely. Every detail you've already heard about Desmond will sit differently. So hold it. What I'll tell you now is what the terms required him to bring. 1 item. Personal. Irreplaceable. Something that, in Mr. Akin's precise phrasing, carries the memory of a moment when you were genuinely soft. Desmond went home that night and spent 3 hours going through a box he hadn't opened in 11 years. He found what he was looking for at the bottom, wrapped in a cloth he didn't remember using. He brought it the following Tuesday. He did not look at it again before handing it over. It worked. I want to sit with that for a moment before we get to everything else, because I think it's important, maybe even necessary, that you understand how completely, how intoxicatingly, how gloriously it worked. Within 72 hours of the exchange, Desmond walked into a site meeting with 4 contractors who had spent the better part of 2 years casually disrespecting his time, and within 10 minutes, all 4 of them were leaning forward, nodding, speaking to him in the careful, measured tones people reserve for someone whose displeasure has real consequences. The meeting ended early because everything he proposed was agreed to without negotiation. He wrote one line in his journal that evening. So this is what it feels like. Deals that had stalled for months closed within weeks. A rival developer who had publicly belittled him at an industry event called to apologize. Unprompted, stumbling over the words, sounding genuinely unsettled by his own need to make it right. People returned his calls on the first attempt. People laughed at things he said that weren't funny. People stepped aside in corridors without being asked. And underneath all of it, almost too quiet to notice at first, something else. Something that wasn't respect. A woman on his street crossed to the other side when she saw him coming. He told himself she was in a hurry. A neighbor's dog, a large, friendly animal that had always bounded toward him, pressed itself against the fence and didn't make a sound as he passed. His assistant quit after week 2. Said she'd started having nightmares about him. Which, honestly, based on what she described to her friend, who told someone, who eventually told the person who told me, I believe her completely. But Desmond didn't care. Desmond was winning. Ask yourself honestly, would you? If you could walk into any room and own it completely, command it, bend it quietly to your presence without lifting a finger, would you pay the price? Think about your answer carefully. Because Desmond didn't think about his at all. It started with the meetings. Desmond would be sitting across a table from someone, a banker, a colleague, a contractor, watching them defer to him, watching their eyes drop slightly, watching their hands move with that telltale restlessness of people in the presence of something they can't name but feel compelled to accommodate. He'd been enjoying that. He'd earned that. Except now he could feel it. Not observe it. Feel it. From the inside. Their side. The dread that preceded his arrival in a room before he'd even opened the door. The physical instinct to look away from him and the equally strong inability to do so. The sense, sourceless, reasonless, completely overwhelming, that something predatory was present and that stillness was the only safe response. He was feeling what they felt, while being the thing that caused it. He wrote, I don't know which emotions are mine. Then, 2 pages later, I don't think any of them are. Here's what Mr. Akin had taken from him. At the bottom of that box, wrapped in cloth, Desmond had found a photograph. Himself at age 9, at a school play, mid-laugh, completely unself-conscious. On the back, in his mother's handwriting, my boy. It was irreplaceable because it was the last clean record of Desmond experiencing joy without calculating its value. The last evidence of a version of him that felt things without immediately asking what they were worth. Without it, there was no buffer. The fear he projected had nowhere to stop. It cycled out into the room, back into him, amplified, returned, amplified again. He had become both the source and the receiver of something that was never meant to run in a loop. He stopped going into meetings. Then he stopped leaving the house. His journal entries shortened. The handwriting changed. Page 201. It watches through me now. Page 208. I asked it to stop, and it said it was me asking. Page 214. If I am still in here, then why can't I? That's where the English ends. His journal runs to page 254. The remaining 40 pages are filled, densely, wall to wall, margin to margin, in a script no one has been able to identify. 3 people have looked at it. None of them would look for long. Desmond was found by a property partner conducting a welfare check 6 weeks after he stopped responding to calls. He was in the house, seated at the kitchen table, dressed, groomed, entirely physically intact. He looked up when they entered, acknowledged them by name, and asked if they wanted coffee. He made the coffee correctly. He offered milk. He said it was good of them to come by. Everything he said was right. The order was wrong. Not noticeably, not in a way you'd catch immediately. But if you spent more than a few minutes with him, something accumulated. Responses landed a beat after the question they answered. References arrived before the subjects they referred to. He'd conclude a thought and then begin it. Small inversions, subtle enough to dismiss, persistent enough to disturb. His partners bought out his share of 3 developments over the following months. Quietly, generously. The kind of generous that means nobody wants to look too closely. Mr. Akin, as far as anyone has been able to establish, was never in that office building again. The company name on the conference room booking doesn't appear in any register. Roland, the lawyer, retired abruptly, moved abroad, declined to stay in contact with anyone from his previous life. The deal, as far as I can tell, went exactly as Mr. Akin intended it to. Every term fulfilled, every clause honored. The last entry in Desmond's journal that anyone could read, the last line in English, on page 214, said only this: "I can see it now. It has always been me. I have always been it." 2 stories. 2 people who chose this, who sought it out, negotiated for it, signed whatever needed signing, and handed over whatever needed handing over. They made decisions. They had agency. However catastrophically they used it, Story 3 is different. Because in Story 3 nobody chose anything if you've made it to Story 3, and I said I respected you if you did, then I need to tell you something before we begin. This one was sent to me anonymously. A document, a series of screenshots, and a single voice note with no name attached. I have not been able to verify every detail. I have not been able to reach the person who sent it. I don't know, as I'm sitting here recording this, whether Amara is still alive. I'm going to tell you what I know. That's all I can do. Amara was 22, third-year university student, sociology major, dean's list, the kind of person who sent detailed responses to group chats and actually read the assigned texts before seminars. She was sharp, grounded, the sort of person who, if she were watching this video right now, would have spent the first 2 stories constructing rational explanations in the comments. She didn't believe in any of this. I want you to hold that. Because what makes Amara's case the most disturbing thing I have ever documented is not the details, and the details are disturbing. It's the fact that her disbelief was total, genuine, and completely irrelevant to what was already in motion. The curse wasn't on Amara specifically. It wasn't placed on her name or her body or her choices. It was placed on the seat she was born into, a position in a family line, a specific inheritance of consequence. And there had been 2 women before her who sat in that same seat. Neither of them had reached 20-5. It started with a dream. The same dream, recurring for 11 consecutive nights. A room she didn't recognize. A woman she didn't know sitting across a table, not speaking, just watching her with an expression Amara could only describe as foreknowledge. Every night the same room, the same woman, the same unbearable stillness. On the 12th night the woman leaned forward and said 4 words. "Ask your Auntie Rosaline." Amara hadn't spoken to Annie Rosaline in 3 years. Nobody in the family spoke to Annie Rosaline much. She was the one who had left, the one who didn't attend gatherings, who lived alone in a flat in a city 2 hours away and sent birthday cards that always arrived exactly on time and said almost nothing personal. She was described by various family members as difficult, private, or simply as the one who doesn't talk about the old country. Amara called her on a Tuesday morning. There was a long silence after Amara described the dream. Then Rosaline said, very quietly. "You shouldn't have started dreaming those yet. You're too young. They came for your grandmother's sister at 24. Your mother's cousin Adiz at 23. Amara pulled both names. She'd heard them distantly, peripherally, in the way families reference the dead they don't want to examine too closely. She found what she could. The grandmother's sister, Fua, died in 1967. Adiz died in 1991. Different countries, different decades, different causes listed on every official record. Same age, same month, same particular constellation of preceding symptoms: the lost time, the skin markings, the dreams of a watching woman that Amara was only now realizing she had been quietly experiencing for weeks. There was no innocent explanation. She knew it before she finished the research. Each piece of evidence she found didn't raise new possibilities. It closed them, one by one, until only one remained. She called Rosaline back. "Who did this?" she asked. Another silence. Longer this time. "Someone who believed she had a reason," Rosaline said. "Someone who is still alive." Something in those last three words moved through the cases differently. Not quite an echo, not quite a pattern, but a shadow of one. The infrastructure behind Mama Zola, the network Mr. Akin operated within, the sense across all three stories that none of this was isolated, that somewhere underneath all of it, things were connected in ways I haven't been able to fully map. That I'm not saying it's the same system. I'm saying I can't confirm that it isn't. 3 days after Amara began researching, something changed in the quality of her days. The best way I can describe it, and this is her language from the document she sent me, is that the air around her developed texture, a resistance, like moving through something that wasn't quite visible but had weight. She'd walk into her kitchen and feel the room adjust, the way a room does when someone else is already in it and no one was ever in it. She started seeing a figure in her peripheral vision, always at the same distance, always in the same posture, standing, very still, facing her. The moment she turned to look directly, nothing. But in the corner of her eye, in reflective surfaces, in the dark shape of a doorway seen from across a hallway, it was consistent, patient, unhurried, as if it had all the time in the world, because it had already been waiting for 22 years. Then her grandmother's belongings arrived. Her mother had been sorting through a storage unit and sent Amara a box of things she thought she'd want: photographs, letters, a Bible with handwritten notes in the margins. At the bottom of the box, beneath everything else, was an envelope, sealed, old enough that the paper had yellowed at the corners. On the front, in handwriting Amara didn't recognize. For Amara, to be opened when she begins to understand. Her name, her full name, not a nickname, not a family abbreviation. The name her parents had chosen before she was born, that no one outside her immediate family had used consistently, written before she existed. She opened it. Inside, a single page. I'm going to read you part of what it said, because some of it I won't share. Some of it isn't mine to put into the world. By the time you read this, you will already feel it. Don't be afraid. Fear feeds it. What was done to you was done out of smallness. A small person making a large decision for a line of women they resented. You are the third. The third is always the one who sees it clearly. That is both the danger and the only way through. It was signed with a name Amara didn't recognize. Beneath the name, a date. The letter ended with that date. It wasn't a birth date or a death date or any anniversary she could place. It was 6 months before Amara found the letter, and it had already passed. I'm going to tell you what Amara did next. But I need you to understand something. What she found out when she followed that date is the part of this case that made me lose sleep. And I have read a lot of these cases. I have sat with a lot of dark material in this room. This is the one that stayed. The living family member wasn't difficult to identify. Once Amara had the timeline, the geography, the specific nature of what had been placed, and when, there was only one person it could have been. One person with the proximity, the knowledge, and, as Amara would discover, the motive she had been carrying quietly for over 50 years. Her name was Annie Comfort, 81 years old, lived alone, kept a small, immaculate garden, made her own pepper soup from scratch every Friday. Amara drove to her house on a Thursday afternoon. I want you to picture this scene correctly, because it matters. This was not a confrontation in the dramatic sense. There were no raised voices, no accusations flung across a room. It was two women at a kitchen table, afternoon light coming in through clean curtains. We were children, Amara said. Fua was 24. Adiz was 23. I'm 22. I know how old you are, Comfort said softly. Can you undo it? The silence that followed was its own answer. Even if I were willing, Comfort said finally. What's placed on a seat can only be lifted by the one who placed it before they leave. And I am very old, Amara. I am not going to be here much longer. She poured the tea then, both cups, as if they'd simply been catching up. As if the afternoon light and the clean curtains and the smell of the garden were the natural setting for what had just been said. Amara didn't drink hers. She stood up, walked to the door. I hope the land was worth it, she said. Comfort didn't answer. When Amara looked back from the doorway, the old woman was sitting exactly as she had been, hands folded, tea poured, watching the window with an expression that looked, impossibly, like grief that know you want an ending. I understand. After everything, after Maya, after Desmond, after all of it, you want Amara's story to close differently. You want her to have found something in that letter, some key in the date, some path through that the old woman couldn't block. I don't have that for you. That's why I deleted this script twice. This section is why. 3 weeks after Amara sent me this material, her accounts went quiet. Not deleted, just still. Her last post was a photograph of a library window at dusk, no caption. She has not been active since. Auntie Comfort died 6 weeks later. Natural causes. She was 81 and her heart simply stopped, which is the most ordinary ending to this story and somehow the worst one. Because what Amara's research had confirmed, across 3 sources, independently, is that a generational curse of this type cannot be dissolved by the one who placed it after their death. The mechanism closes. The door locks from the inside. Whatever was set in motion stays in motion with no hand left to still it. No one,